I'd like to welcome to the show now Toronto Argonauts Director of Canadian Scouting, Vince Magri. Thanks so much for joining us today and agreeing to talk some football.
No problem, anytime.
So I got to know, how many Argos over the years, Argos players have done spit takes or double takes when they found out that you were a vicious, hulking 300-pound offensive lineman?
I wouldn't say hulking, but pretty much everybody.
It's remarkable. Like you look at you now and you look like a halfback.
Yeah, people try to, sometimes they ask, what position did you play? And they assume, linebacker or something else. But yeah, it was a long journey, but, in total, I think I lost 115 pounds at the height of it.
That's pretty amazing. I actually remember watching you play pretty well. My wife was a Marauder, won a national tennis championship there. So I think of the school very fondly. But I had a bunch of players that would have lined up beside you, overlapped with you a little bit. Brian Dowd, Sean Fahey, Gower, Lippert, Aaron Clark, a bunch of guys.
The Mississauga connection.
Yeah, that's, coaching at Lorne Park and in around that area. We fed McMaster pretty well over the years, but yeah, I remember watching you play pretty well. You were a good player, but what is the?
I appreciate that.
What's the scouting report? If you were to self-assess now, look at a senior Vince Magri, center guard, what do you have to say about that player?
Undersized and unathletic.
That's you're being too humble. You were a very good player, but is there anything you'd go back and maybe tell the freshman version of you?
That's a good question. For me, it would probably just be, just keep trying to increase my foot speed more than anything. I know I had physical limitations. I know I had some athletic limitations. So, I always worked extra hard on making sure, technically I was there, preparation wise, made sure I was there, put the time in the film and studying the opponent and, all the little stuff that kind of carried into what I do now. And also playing with a bit of an edge just to try to make up for some of that stuff.
Did you learn to long snap?
I could do it. I just wasn't athletic enough to cover.
Right.
So I could do I could do the short snapping, the field goal stuff. I could deep snap on a punt, but I was never I did it in high school, but never in college.
So your job title is a little bit misleading because you scout pretty much any football game that's on. But would it be fair to say that the best performance evaluation for you is the CFL Draft every year?
Yeah, that's still my primary role, and kind of the I don't want to say the apex of it because we do everything, but that's kind of the big time event for us, and especially with what I do year round.
I've heard scouts and general managers talk about having a certain type of player, player with an identity or specific characteristics that kind of embody that franchise. As you guys look to rebuild this team a little bit, and someone says, well, that's a Toronto Argonaut. What are you hoping they're talking about? What attributes are those?
That's a great question. I think, over the years and, when you go through this process a lot, you really start to get a feel for not just the guys athletically and the body types, but the kind of guys with the mental makeup and, the type of guys that succeed in this league over time and have long-lasting success. And for us, it's kind of been guys that are intrinsically motivated, guys that are self-starters, and guys that love the game, right? Guys that are passionate, they're hungry, they live and breathe football. They kind of can't get enough of it. They're students of the game. They play with an edge, guys that, you can just get a feel just by watching their film that, they love the game and they're going to give you everything they got. I think, if you got a team of, 40, 46 guys that are all kind of leaving it all out on the field, I think you're going to be in a good spot.
I think you got a lot of those guys in this year's draft. I was surprised at I don't know. I feel like I thought the draft went extremely well. I know you guys loved the draft. I thought it was amazing. I thought it was the best draft in the CFL, and I have a little bias as an Argos fan, but I felt like I was putting that aside. It's a draft class I was very familiar with. It's a lot of guys that I know pretty well, but I thought it was amazing. Why do you think the rest of the national media wasn't as high on it as you or I might have been?
I'm not sure. I can't answer that for them. I just hope, a few years from now, they'll realize that they should have. But no, we were, I know every team, if you go ask every team in the CFL, they'll say they were excited about their draft, but we were. It's not a fabrication. It's, we were excited kind of top to bottom with all the guys we got.
Yeah, no, you're right. Like every team says that anyway, but you could see the genuine excitement just on, you see it on Pinball's face all the time, but, on, Coach Dinwiddie and Murph and, everyone was over the moon with the draft. So, I felt justified in being really pleased with how it went. So in my official mock draft and almost every simulation I ran, I had us taking Dejan Kassar, Champong, and I had Carter O'Donnell instead of Thurin Churchill. But the one variable that turned all of my mocks and simulations upside down was if Jordan Williams was not taken first overall. And in those scenarios, I had us taking Williams, and then we usually ended up with Kian Schaefer-Baker and Cam Lawson and Jonathan Zamora, the center. Was there, I know there was a plan, but were you ever thinking Williams may not go first, and did it matter?
And he's a fantastic football player. I think he's going to be an outstanding pro. We did a lot of our work on Williams, speaking to guys around the NFL that had gone into ECU and kind of his pro day numbers when he came out. And, we did a lot of work on it. And he's going to be a fantastic football player. I think for us, we were really high on Dejan. Even going back to last year, because initially he was in last year's draft class before he got hurt. So even going into his, original senior year, we were very high on him. We'd watched a bunch of his junior film. We had talked to some people out over there. And then when you watched his first couple games, you thought to yourself, hey, if he continues this path over, 10, 11, 12 games, for a guy that can run like that and be dynamic with the ball at 6'2", 200 pounds and being able to elevate and have great body control and run a whole bunch of routes. You could see a path of him maybe even getting into an NFL camp, and unfortunately he got injured and missed the rest of that season, and then, it's been documented. He went to Virginia, wasn't completely healthy, didn't really get on the field much until the end of the year. But, we did a lot of work on his time at Virginia. We talked to a lot of people. Last year's draft pick, Joe Spaziani, the long snapper, he's actually a GA over there now at Virginia. So he was giving us a little scoop, kind of peek behind the curtain there as well. And, everybody on that staff raved about him, and just his ability, we thought was just too good to pass up. He's also
a great kid too.
Great kid.
So, yeah, and that's another thing that, you look at a lot of these guys that have been brought in this year, not exclusively through the draft, but free agent signings. There's a lot of high character guys that are going to be in this locker room. So I think that's something that, I'm really excited to see, how that translates to playing as a team, as a unit.
That was a big point of emphasis for sure.
So I want you to sell me on Thurin Churchill, because I obviously missed something in my pre-draft evaluations. I had him with a 5th round grade. And, I've warmed up a little bit since and watching some more of his film. But what am I missing? You're a professional scout. I'm not. And he's a lineman, which is your area of expertise. So I know you're right. I just want to know what am I not seeing?
Well, for us, the big thing was his feet, and for a guy, who's pushing 6'6", 285, 290 pounds, he moves his feet extremely well. And he can move laterally. He can get some depth in his kick, but he moves well laterally in the short area. He can mirror guys, stay in front, and he's got a strong punch. He's got some heavy hands, and for a guy who, I know he's a little older, but again, when you kind of see him in person up close, I mean, he is lean. He's got room to fill out, and you get to 305, fill that frame out a little bit, and you get that frame and that length to go with his foot speed. I think he's a guy that, has all the traits, but also, being at Regina, Coach Sheldon out there, he does an excellent job coaching the O-linemen. They're always well coached when they come out of that school. So he's a kid that's technically sound. He's got good football intelligence. So you're not worried about him kind of trying to learn guard and tackle, so he kind of gives you value as a true swing guy right away, and then hope that, he can kind of sit behind Jamal and learn and kind of see where he goes from there. But, typically you don't have a lot of guys that every year that you feel can be, guys that can develop into long-term starting tackles. And we feel like he's got that ability.
I think he's also probably got the ability to move inside if need be. I could see him playing guard as well. But yeah, it's amazing to have a tackle that you can have in place with someone in front of him like Jamal. And actually, you've got a few guys that that can sort of show him the ropes as he adds some weight and so forth. I think I feel like I hold age against players in the draft maybe more than I should. And just for any listeners or viewers that aren't sure, I'm not saying like someone in their mid 20s is over the hill by any means. It's more just that there's no jump. They're typically players go through this sort of athletic jump twice in their football career. Once usually near the end of high school, and then again in that first 2 years of university. There's this physical jump, and a guy that's 24, 25 years old has already gone through that. So often what you see is what you get. But you're saying he can still add size, he can still add strength.
Yeah. And at the same time, like his strength level is, we feel it's sufficient. It's just, he's got room to even get, a little bigger. But, even again, he is a little older, but at the same time, I think sometimes people can get a little too carried away with that. I mean, if that means he's a, 9-year pro instead of a 12-year pro, I mean, we can deal with that.
And you look down south at Joe Burrow is going to be 24 during this season. Does that mean you don't draft him, right? So
and forego however long he's a great player. So it's never really. I mean, the only thing with Thurin that did come in to factor a little bit is that he was out of eligibility, so he couldn't go back to school. But we were taking him in the first round, so it wasn't really an issue.
Right. So one of the more fascinating parts of your job, I think, is the week-to-week stuff. How does that work for you as you, do some advanced scouting for the next opponent? Like, are you working 1 week ahead of the team or multiple weeks? Like, how does that process go?
So basically, we'll try to stay 1 week ahead of our future opponent. And typically what we'll try to do is we'll try to have a report for the coaching staff the day after our last game. So as they're going into game planning as a group, we're going to try to have a report on 3 phases of the opposing team, offense, defense, special teams, and try to highlight just some tendency, right? We're not going to try to tell them how to coach. We're not going to tell them what to call, but we're going to tell them kind of what to look for, how we would anticipate them lining up, how we would anticipate them deploying their ratio, if they had an injury to a Canadian the week before, and it might cause a shuffle throughout their roster, what to look for. Teams have, you see it in the States, teams have different personnel packages that they'll run in and out. But in the CFL, it's a little more complicated because usually those personnel packages have a ratio component to it, right? Where you take out a Canadian receiver to put in a Canadian fullback. It's not just a straight, it has to all match up. So, just making sure the coaching staff is on the same page with that too. And, if you have an injury replacement who is, a true rookie or, a guy that the coaches haven't seen yet, but we'd have seen them in the NFL or watched some of their college film, just giving them a brief scouting report on those guys. And we'll crunch some numbers, try to get tendencies, what teams like to do in certain situations, and just kind of put it all out there. And if they can take anything from it and utilize it that next week, then it's a win.
Do you do self-scouting that way too? Like, would you look at the Argos and say, for example, like, hey, Coach Dinwiddie, we're opening up with this series a lot. Like, maybe we want to look at showing something different, or is that left up to the coaches?
It's more the coaches. We've occasionally done it, more just kind of on our own. And if you want to kind of take it to the coach, just kind of give a heads up. Usually on a bye week, we'll kind of look to do that. Depends on the time of year too, because sometimes, if it's in the fall, we'll be on the road or, in NFL camps or something, but we'll try to do something small.
I know a lot of really great football guys with wonderful X's and O's, great strategy for play calling, etc., who have absolutely no gift for talent evaluation. How was this something that you found out about yourself, that you have this ability to diagnose talent, to see who's going to turn into something and who's not? Like, where did you notice that, or where did that come from?
I don't know. I guess it's just something I've always kind of naturally done without thinking about it, right? I mean, as a kid, you're a diehard football fan and you're always kind of watching. And I was one of those kind of dorks that would watch NFL preseason games to see, hey, look at this guy. Hey, this guy might be a player. This guy might be a player. And it was something that I didn't know at the time, but when you kind of look back, like even when you're playing in high school, right, and you had a teammate and you could say, hey, this guy's going to be good one day, or, what were they thinking bringing in this guy? This guy can't play. It's just kind of, to me, it was always something I was doing without really thinking about it.
You're putting together your own depth charts in your head and stuff like that as well.
It's just, maybe this guy might be our starting, whatever. And, you didn't really think about it at the time. And then when I graduated, I wasn't sure what I wanted to get into specifically. I just knew that I wanted to work in football and make it my profession. I wasn't sure if it was going to be scouting or coaching, but being able to get, onto a staff at U of T and then again at Mac, and being able to do a bit of everything, the coaching on the field, but also hitting the road, going scouting, going recruiting. I mean, to me, that was definitely my favorite part of the job.
You probably do a lot more film work than you do in-person watching of games, just because, a lot of them are played at the same time, especially like U Sports. Do you prefer being there in the stands, or do you prefer having, like an all-24 film to look at?
Definitely in the stands, I would say. Just because, I think that they have to go together. But at the same time, I mean, for me, there's certain things you can kind of get being there live, right? It sounds kind of tacky or cliche, but sometimes you can just feel something by a way a guy moves, or the way a guy acts, or even the way his teammates kind of interact with him. And, you can kind of watch the guy after a play. You can watch him between plays. You can watch him on the sideline. Just little things. Even the other day I was watching something, they talked about Mike Mayock. He was on the field at a national championship game, and Josh Jacobs ran past him, and he could feel the burst, and it's, you obviously, he's fast on film. He's got a burst, but there's something when you're down there and you see it, and, you kind of get a feel for it. I think you can't really replace that.
Yeah. And I love like what you're saying about the sideline stuff too, a quarterback misses a pass, how do they react? Are they getting in the receiver's face in a good way or
right.
in a bad way? Are they pouting off the field, ripping
right.
their helmet off? Are they sitting on their own? Are they, working with the guys? I think there's a ton of stuff that you can see live, but you don't always have that luxury.
Right.
Sometimes
right.
all you've got is film. And so you've got to then, I guess do a lot of background checks and check
right.
in with all the coaches and so forth. You spend a lot of time, talking to U Sports coaches?
Yeah, a lot. So, I mean, normally we, we'll visit every school anyway at some point throughout the year, whether it's a practice or game. Practices are good because you can go, you can speak to the coaching staff, you can, observe practice. And a lot of those little things, like we mentioned, you can see in practice because, there's less reps going on. You can kind of just observe and, speak to everybody around the program and try to get a feel for the player off the field. And then it helps because like you said, you're not going to be able to watch every game live. It's just, logistically it's impossible. But if, you see him practice, you see him up close, you see him move around, and you have the background work, you get back to your desk, you watch the film, and it helps you complete the picture.
Are you able to watch a football game and just sort of enjoy it as a football game anymore? Or have those days gone where you as soon as that game's on, you're in full scouting mode?
They're gone. I mean, and like, coaching a couple of years too, like I am interested in, some of the schemes and the trends and, what's certain, like, the Ravens and how they've kind of brought back the triple option, in modern football. And, I enjoy that as well, but, you're always kind of, when your brain just becomes wired after, doing this day in, day out for all these years.
I tried early in my coaching career. I got my official certification so that I could be a referee because I thought that would be, I didn't really want to ref games. I just wanted to know the rules a little bit better so that I could actually cite things to referees when they gave me a hard time. But I actually had to do a few games as a part of that process. And I was the worst referee ever because I got caught up watching positional battles, instead of, watching for holding or offsides. I'm watching this, receiver DB battle going on. And, you
just want to let them play, right? You don't want to throw a flag.
Yeah. Well, I realized I could only watch the game as a coach. That's sort of when I realized that, I can't really be a proper fan anymore, but I guess I'm okay with that.
And it is different watching film. Even, from that perspective, watching film from a coaching perspective versus a talent evaluating process, it is different.
Do you have a team that you cheer for in the NFL?
Not anymore, but growing up, I was a big 49er fan.
I was a Cincinnati Bengals fan growing up, so you never said the words 49ers around me with 2 Super Bowl losses. And man, Joe Montana was not a popular man in my house, so I'm glad you're not a 49ers fan anymore. But I want to thank you again so much for joining us today. It's been great. Hopefully we've got some football for you to watch soon and everyone can get back to it. But in the meantime, stay well, stay safe. And again, thanks so much for joining us on the show today.
I appreciate it anytime.